The mineral laws of 1947 stipulates that although you own the land and have the title, you do not own the minerals in the ground. If you lived and got educated in the Western world or the New World, the Americas, from the day we've been going to school, the only thing they teach us was that Christopher Columbus discovered the New World. People, how can you discover a new world when people were already here? What about the Taínos, the Caribs, and the Arawaks? Weren't they people? Or because they never wrote the historical books? YouTube family, it's me again, Jamcan. And today I want to talk about a topic: who actually owns Jamaica? Let's not get emotional here. I want us to be able to be objective and use rational reason to come to a logical understanding of who really owns Jamaica. I have made a decision to say, tell you what, I am going to cut out and go to the motherland. And yes, I got some heat for that. That may I sell out. But when you really look at the inner workings and the economic control and how the power structure has set up in Jamaica, I realize that I have some logical reason why I want to cut. So before you roast me, I still want you to like, share, and subscribe. But as I said, people, let's dive in of who really controls and owns Jamaica. The historical book says the first group of people that were in Jamaica were they called the redhead people. Then the Taíno, who came from, say, South America, Venezuela, Belize, and all those countries, came to Jamaica. Then you had the Arawaks. From an economic and geopolitical point of view, those people controlled and owned Jamaica. It is just what it is because they live there. Then came Christopher Columbus in his 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Landed in Jamaica in May 1494. About 50 years after he landed, he wiped out all the inhabitants in the country with diseases, European diseases like smallpox. And now we hear that Africa is the foundation for diseases. When we look at history and realize the European wiped out the native with diseases. They wiped them out due to slave labor because guess what? Christopher Columbus wanted to find a shorter route to China so he can trade silk and gold. And he went westward because he thought that was a shorter route to get to Asia. So he, I would say, founded Hispaniola, then Jamaica. So whether you like it or not, you would say that he came on the scene and 50 years after, he wiped out everything because of hard labor and, as I said, diseases, and many of them committed suicides. Now, at that moment, when he wiped out all of them, we must ask this question: who really owned Jamaica at that time? Because guess what? He used primitive accumulation to wipe out the natives. When you really think about it, it was Queen Isabella and Ferdinand. They were Catholic monarchs, families who financed this expedition to come to the New World. So in reality, as though Columbus came out and killed all the natives, whether they like it or not, the King and Queen of Spain and the Catholic Church controlled Jamaica. Can't believe how some of us still are Catholics. But hey, to my Catholic fans, no disrespect. I just study history, and when I look at the history, I'd rather be a Protestant. No disrespect. Economically speaking and geopolitically speaking, Spain controlled Jamaica from about 1494 to about 1655. Although they were bringing slaves in, the slaves trade started around 1533. So although they were bringing in slaves and weren't paying them, Spain controlled Jamaica. Now, you got to realize that Western Europe found the New World, And all of these wars, they were fighting with each other, pirates and buccaneers, and sinking each other's ships and hijacking each other's ship for gold and silver. There was a war for the spoils. I've said in my previous videos that where there are no spoils, there are no wars. Now, the Anglo-Spanish War, 1655, when Spain and England were fighting, and they realized that they came up with a treaty to tell you what, we have to find a way to stop this war, and they found a treaty. However, Britain at that time now controlled Jamaica from 1655. So Jamaica now became a British colony. Many of the Spaniards left, and Britain now became the sole controller of Jamaica, in which the slave trade now intensified, where it became more commercially viable to trade slaves from the west coast of Africa, the Gold Coast, to the Caribbean and the Americas. And what they do now, they bring sugar now, tobacco and other raw materials now onto Europe. So when you really look at it economically speaking, Britain control. Britain control, and remember now, Britain had a thing called land ownership. So British aristocracy now control land in Jamaica. This is where now the planter class system came into fruition now, that you had large plantation owners now who owned plantation and were trading slaves. As I said again now, economically speaking now, the slave had no control. The British overlord and the monarchy now controlled Jamaica at this time. To build any thriving society, people, you need labor, cheap labor. Back in the 15th and 16th century, you never had mechanized economy. Machines and robots were not doing what we wanted them to do. So we need cheap labor. Keep in mind, when Columbus came over and Spain controlled, what many of us didn't realize, that remember that the Catholicism was having their crusade with Islam, and there were many Africans in Spain and also Italy. They were called the Moors. Now, when Catholicism won now, as I said, the Pope now realized that, okay, tell you what now, let's ship some of these, I would say, new prisoners or slaves to the New World. Pope Nicholas V now issued a bull now that we need to enslave Africans and many of the slaves that came out of the Crusades. So this is where now you realize that now the black people, many of them from West Africa, were more tolerate the diseases, because remember now, blacks were doing a lot of business and also fighting wars in Europe. So black people could withstand the diseases from the white population in Europe. The natives could not do such a thing. That's why they got wiped out and decimated by the diseases that came from Europe. So when Pope Nicholas issued the bull and they started to enslave Africans now, it became a business because African could withstand the diseases. In the midst of all of this economic change, we became slaves. We became property. It's like when you buy horses and sheep and goat and all of that. Black people who came as slaves had no say in the decision making. No say whatsoever. And remember now, lands under the British now became private property now, where you have big landowners own the land. So guess what now? And let's kind of put it into a nutshell here now, people. If I put up my capital to build a house or an apartment, let's think objectively now, people. Who owns the building when it's finished? Is it me who put up my capital, or is it the person who built the building? The reason why I ask a question, because many of us, the 2.8 million people now, or maybe less, because the elites maybe about 100,000. The 7.9 million people who own Jamaica who say we're Jamaicans now. We're Jamaicans because we say it. We're Jamaicans because we live there. We're Jamaicans because we created a new society away from Africa. But the question now, people, economically, what do we control? So do we really own Jamaica, or we're just, I would say, tenants on the island? Or we're just caretakers on the island? I've said to you before that 21 plus family of oligarchs control the island. And they have a right to control the island because they're family. And after independence, many of them came in and invested in the merchant system and they built a thriving economy. But keep in mind, the most fundamental thing about the oligarchs, their family, they have structure. The black slave population completely could not maintain a family structure, could not have a family because guess what now? Massa could sell slaves anytime they want, break the family. Men and women could not marry because we were considered property. So the family structure got completely broken down, where you see the new merchant class that dominate now has a family structure. As I say, a tree without deep roots has nothing to hold on to. So when you really assess it, do the Jamaicans now like me come from a slave stock? Do we really own Jamaica although we say we're from Jamaica? Or when you look at the fine print of who control most of the land, are those the ones who own Jamaica? Let's look at it from a different point of view. Do you know the mineral laws of 1947 stipulates that although you own the land and have the title, you do not own the minerals in the ground? You do not own the gold, you do not own the coltan, you do not own the copper, you do not own the silver, you don't own any minerals that they find in the ground. So question you must ask, do you really own Jamaica? Or do you own anything in Jamaica? Because when you really look at C3 metals who just found gold and copper in Jamaica, and when you look at Robert Stewart who owned 70 mining certificates, then you realize that the same oligarchs control, and the government, which is now the biggest part of the oligarchs now, can outsource whatever resources that you think you own to a private entity. Then what do you really own? Or you're just tenants and the land. People, I don't want to keep blabbing away. Drop your comments, share your ideas, and let me get your point of view of who really owns and controls Jamaica. Because when I really look at it, part of my family stock comes from Africa and the other part comes from England and Ireland because of my last name and because I am a mutt. Mongrel dog, them call it. So because of that, I realize I really don't own anything. So the point is that, is it really Jamaicans who are claiming Jamaica to be Jamaicans owning Jamaica? Or is it elites own Jamaica? Or is it England own Jamaica? Or is it a government who owns Jamaica? Or in general, is it who has the money and control most of the assets and the land own Jamaica? Where does that leave me and where does that leave you? That's why people, I'm gone.